Hi, I'm Jenn Wilson, Senior Programmer, and welcome to this Film Independent Presents screening of Montana Story. Special thanks to our lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association and Vision Media, who hosts all of our virtual screenings and Q&As. And now please welcome today's Q&A guests, writers and directors of Montana Story, Scott McGehee and David Siegel.
Aaron?
I just want to see him one more time.
7 years ago, she ran away from him.
How is it that I'm feeling pity for him right now? I think I should go.
You just got here.
No, this is better.
Stay the night at least.
Is there something wrong with Mr. T?
We're gonna put him down.
I'm not going to let you kill him.
Are you planning on keeping an old horse in the Big Apple?
What, you think I'm being stupid?
Of course not. I've done way stupider things for animals than drag a horse from Montana to New York.
Won't you release me?
Welcome.
Hi, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
So because Film Independent is a member organization for a lot of aspiring filmmakers, I usually start with a question of what your origin story is. So for each of you, could you talk about how you got into writing and directing? We can start with David.
Sure.
Well, they're kind of the same
I know. I was
story.
going
Yeah.
to say our origin story is sort of intertwined in that, excuse me, neither one of us went to film school. I was doing an MFA at RISD. I was an artist, and Scott was going to be an academic. He was doing a PhD in Japanese film studies at Berkeley. And we know each other through Scott's sister, Kelly, who's done production design on all of our work. And I met Kelly at the Art Institute in San Francisco before I went to RISD. And Scott and I got to talking about movies a lot and things that he was interested in. And when I finished my MFA and he had finished his MA, we decided to make some short films together and see how that went. And it just kind of grew from there. And I think that's why we write, produce, and direct together, because there was no one there. We were so ignorant of the way things were that we just started doing it together, and it worked really well for us. And
We actually moved into the same apartment,
we actually
became
were roommates.
got jobs, like parallel jobs as waiters, and just kind of like taught ourselves to make short films on 16 millimeter just from the
That's
ground up,
amazing.
knowing nothing. Yeah.
And I want to give a shout out to the Film Arts Foundation in San Francisco, because that's where we were based. And I think without the Film Arts Foundation was like, like the school locker for us, because we could go there and use their resources, and they were so helpful in kind of just guiding us technically about
Well, connecting us with an
with other
independent
people.
film community there. It was a really nice hub. Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by creative teams. How does that work when you actually get on the set? Do you divide up directing duties?
We don't.
How does it work?
Yeah, we write together, so that's the kind of foundation of our creative process. I would say it's like we really kind of hash out ideas together, and and a lot of that writing is very visual because we know we're going to be directing it. So by the time we get to set, and we also rehearse the actors together. So there's a whole kind of conversation, a kind of creative collaborative conversation with the actors and all of our keys before we ever get to set.
All other aspects of prep, are done completely together.
But on set, we have a kind of different, like over the years, I think it's become more and more so. We have kind of different domains maybe. And David tends to be the person who's right there talking to actors after a take is over and communicating more directly. And I've kind of learned my best role is to kind of communicate with David. And that way there's sort of one voice coming out of our head. If that makes sense.
Got it.
It's very, after so many years, it's, our communication it's very fluid and often, nonverbal. So it's able to work that way.
But I think it's helpful, like we both can answer a question on set. Like it's easy to find us because there are two of us.
Okay. So let's talk about Montana Story, which was in Toronto Film Festival 2021, right?
That's right.
What inspired you to write a story about characters in Montana? Do either one of you have a connection to Montana?
We have
We had
almost no
no
connection
connection.
to one. Yeah.
We were about to go into prep on an adaptation of a book called The Friend by Sigrid Nunez, which is what we're actually trying to make now. And when the pandemic hit, and it got shut down like everything else, and we kept thinking, I think like a lot of people did, that things were going to come back to normal sooner than they did, or have even. And so we kept thinking that The Friend was going to be able to be made in 2020. And by the beginning of the summer, I think June, we realized that that wasn't going to happen. And, I think what was going on in the world really kind of pushed us towards writing a new script. And we were kind of determined to try and find a way to make it with a small cast and crew in a place where the virus wasn't so heavy. And at that time, Montana was that.
Well, I mean, this was still the middle of the lockdown in New York, and we weren't working in the same spaces. We were communicating via phone calls and Zoom from our, I live in Chinatown, David lives here.
So it was a little crazy that way, but it wound up being really productive. I mean, we spent 8 or 10 hours a day on the phone with each other, on speakerphone. Sort of.
Another guy who works with us, Mike Spreeder, helped us through that process, kind of. And it was really great. The three of us kind of on, he's in Brooklyn, I'm in Chinatown, David's in Flatiron, and we were just kind of brewing up a story that was somewhere outside of where any of us were. And yeah, Montana, it really just seemed like where we wanted to imagine a story, weirdly, in that moment.
I mean, I think it came from, Scott and I both grew up in California and spent a lot of time in the Central Valley and Sierra Nevada mountains. And I think other ideas that we had about stories in California and the West sort of laid the foundation of some of what we wound up talking about for Montana Story. But we had, as Scott said, we'd never been to Montana, so it was a kind of a Montana of our imagination and the internet before we actually got there, and it of course exceeded our expectations, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
I really like the way your script was laid out, so that it allows the audience to discover things in like in real time. You don't know anything beforehand. So when Owen Teauge, who plays one of your two main characters, gets there, you don't know if it's his house. You don't know why he's there. And you find out someone's in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it all happens. It's like, and I found it drew me in so much. When the sister gets there, it's like, well, what happened between the two of them? Like, obviously something's going on, something's wrong. And it felt just kind of like a mystery unfolding. And I loved the way you told the story like that. The other part is that you have a character who's there but not there, Wade, who's in a coma the whole time, their dad who's in a coma. And we can only know about him through the other characters. When you are writing something like that, how are you thinking about it, revealing Wade through the other characters?
I mean, what you've just been saying is, thank you for saying all that, because that's really what was on our mind, is like how to, parcel out the information in a way that would not be frustrating and not be boring, but would, kind of like draw people in and make the audience really, but really make the audience our partners in uncovering the story. Kind of, that was kind of what we talked about. How do we, make that a fun, make each revelation kind of a fun thing to experience as a watcher of the story.
What you were saying about Wade, you can imagine that as we were writing, we thought, should there be a flashback of some kind? Should we see the inciting incident sort of, from 7 years ago? And it just continued to feel to us like a flashback would sort of violate some of what you're talking about in terms of the way the story unfolds and the way the audience comes to understand what happened. And we really felt like, well, that should happen between Cal and Aaron. Like when they finally are able to communicate, that's where we should really sort of feel it.
Yeah, I was really glad that you actually didn't have a flashback, because every single moment he's mentioned, I created him for myself. And, you know, he obviously came across different to each one of those characters. But, you know, when they go and they visit the mine and you reveal the part of the conflict between the daughter and the father about his unscrupulous transactions regarding mining that land, he just appeared for me. I was glad that your his nurse says at one point that he won't wake up, because I did wonder if that was going to be part of the story. He was going to miraculously wake up, and it's like, okay, that's cleared up. He's not gonna like show up and redeem himself. Talk about casting your two actors, Haley Lou Richardson and Owen Teauge, who are absolutely terrific in this.
Thank you. No, we had a really great time with both of them.
We really did, and so sort of in line with what you're talking about, the way the story unfolds, it puts a lot of burden on the actors, because the actors, you know, they really have to carry the exposition. They have to be able to give the audience the feeling and the kind of emotional state that, you know, that or the height of it that we wanted to achieve. And we really, you know, we were just sort of knocked out by both of them. But we had been talking to Haley about playing a part in The Friend. So we had gotten to know her a little bit over Zoom. And Owen auditioned, we had heard about him and weren't that familiar with his work. And then he auditioned for, his audition was beautiful. And everything had to happen so quickly. By the time we finished writing the script, in order to beat the winter, which we didn't entirely beat, but to get to Montana and shoot the movie. So we had to make quick casting decisions, and we knew we wanted Haley, and we just loved Owen, and that's how it came.
There was a real leap of faith, though, with Owen in particular, because he was, you know, in his own lockdown in Florida, and his parents, he put himself on tape in his parents' attic, you know, and which, you know, is the way things go now. But we'd never cast a movie that way, where we just, okay, we're gonna meet him for the first time, like in Montana, and you know, just seeing the two of them together for the first time, we had no idea what they would feel like as a pair of people, you know, like,
yeah,
you know, and it was exciting that way, but it was really, you know, kind of a scary leap of faith.
I mean, we really wondered about their chemistry, because, you know, it needed to be familial, like they needed to feel like a brother and a sister, and they just walked right into that in Montana when they got there, and that was really nice to see.
They're both really terrific, and I have really enjoyed discovering them over the years. I actually did. I used to program for LA Film Festival, and we showed Haley Lou's first two features in the same year, and so I did Q&A with her. And it's so interesting to see her when she's in serious roles, because I know in person she's like a bright light of cheeriness and happiness. So it's so interesting to see, you know, when she does very like contain and ground it, you know, like she did in Columbus and like she does in your movies. But she's fantastic. I feel like both she and Owen are those like from the inside out actors, you know. They can contain this universe like within them and then sort of like open for you. And I just thought they carried the movie so well. It's not easy to do. So for your characters, the characters, you know, of the housekeeper and her son, and the nurse that's taking care of the dad, are all people of color. The people that take care of the house, who grew up with this family, are Native Americans, and the nurse is Kenyan from Africa. Did you in particular want to say something about the people of color versus the white people in the film? I know Native people are a huge part of Montana's story. It'd be hard to make a movie without Native characters in it there that would seem truthful. Do you want to talk about that juxtaposition?
Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was really something that, you know, we dove into Montana and kind of really started getting to know it as a place. And the native characters really did come out of that exploration, as just learning the history of the land and learning who lives there and all of that. It was a very kind of natural evolution to you know, kind of discover those characters in our story in an interesting way.
We thought a lot about place and home, and how people define that for themselves and how people feel proprietary about that, the way people are like either rooted or not rooted in a particular place. And we felt like, you know, the characters around Cal and Aaron needed to have a stake in that sense of place and home in a way that was deeper than what was going on for Cal and Aaron. And that when we resolve the story, we come back to something that feels like it has some sort of duration or longevity that, I don't know, transcends the specifics of the story itself.
It's interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was wondering if that, yeah, if that made sense. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
It's interesting, you know, when there are people of color in a movie now, you sort of expect that there's going to be a conflict that involves there being people of color in it. So I was interested in how this relationship with them would unfold, but what I ended up feeling was that they're very connected, but it's a bit of an uneasy connection. And but it led to what I felt was the deeper meaning of the story, which I don't know if you two feel this, but especially in the last few years in this country, you know, people have started to really think that it's going to take a whole generation of people leaving this earth before we can really change a lot of things, because those people are holding things in place. And that's what it sort of felt like. You needed this older white patriarch with all of his old patriarchal beliefs about Montana and how to do business in the world. You needed for him to pass before everybody else could start to change into something else. And that included his kids and the other characters as well. Did you feel that way about it too?
I think that's really, you've articulated it really, really well. And you know, we when we were talking more from the inside of the story, Cal does what he does to his father at the end of the story because that's what needs to happen in order for a transition to occur. And I like the way you map that idea onto the whole story itself, because that is something that we were thinking about, and I think you put it really well.
We went off to Montana. I was just thinking, we went off to Montana. You know, we wrote this script faster than anything we've ever written. It was like, you know, a matter of weeks from the time we first started kicking off like ideas for it to the time we were actually in Montana shooting, which, you know, we've never experienced that before, like working so quickly to, you know, beat the winter really, but also just to get out there and do something because we were so, you know, kind of locked down in New York. But we got to Montana and we hadn't ever found a title for the story. It was on the front page of the script, it was called Untitled Montana Story, because that's what it had been the whole time we were working on it. And it wasn't until we were editing that we realized that the title for the movie really was Montana Story, that title really felt good to us. And part of the reason it felt so good, I think, is because it, in a strange way, it became a story about place, about what it means to call a place home and, you know, be in a place or from a place or leave a place, and I don't know, and
what a place is now versus what a place can be.
Yeah. Yeah, I really felt that with the characters, the way that it was established that it was their home, but also didn't feel like their home. Do you know what I mean? Like they didn't feel, you could tell that it used to be their home, but they didn't feel comfy there, like a home is supposed to feel, right? So talk about that last scene. It's so good. It's so gorgeous. The last scene of the movie. Was that something that you had always envisioned? Was that always going to be the end, or was that something that you came up with later on? Or
this is going to sound like maybe it's not true, but I'm just saying it because it is true. There were so many things about what we scripted that fell exactly into place in the places that we were looking for in Montana, like the ranch itself, the way we had plotted out the movements around the ranch and in the ranch house. And we did script that ending in a way that we were pretty confident we would never be able to realize. And we were able to find a place that played really well for the reservation. And we were able to find a place that, that we could create a corral like that, and the horses. And
we went out there with the horses. It was the end of a day. We went out there with a drone, like, tiny little camera on this little thing, and a local guy flying it, who, had some experience, but he wasn't like a Hollywood like drone operator. And we went out, we had one good take of that final shot. And it's the take that's in the movie. Like, everything else was chaos. The horses were going the wrong way. The wind was taking the drone out of we nearly hit some power lines, and it was, nuts. But there was one beautiful take. It was the very first take. It was the one that got it. And it's just what we had scripted, just what we had imagined.
And we thought like the movie really needs to end with that kind of sweep. But, we had very limited resources to make the movie and very limited time. And so
I have to say, the other thing that I love watching in that final scene is the chemistry between, Joey and Mookie, those two guys who play the role, Asivak and Gene.
I mean, they set this, they set the scene for that shot. Like, without that.
Yeah.
They just both feel so comfortable in their skin and so comfortable to be there, and just, they really kind of anchor the feeling at the end of the movie for me, really. Nice.
It feels, it feels huge in the end, like, whatever happens. I mean, basically it becomes, whatever happens to Mr. T sort of like sets the tone for what is going to happen to these people. What's their decision about what's going to happen to Mr. T feels like who they are and who they're going to be in the future. So it feels huge by the time you get to that point. And I think I just felt, I was like, I didn't envision them giving the horse to someone. And I was like, why? Like, I was in Owen's narrow vision of what has to happen with this horse. Like, what are the options of what can happen to this horse? And then by the time they finally decide what to do with that, I was like, I didn't even think of that. like, yeah, they're in Montana. Just give the horse to somebody with a big ass ranch. But it makes so much sense, and it's just like, oh yeah, this feels like the right decision. Thank God. It felt like a weight off. So the movie comes out this week, right, in theaters?
Next week, next Friday,
May 13th.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's opening wider the 2 weeks after, the 20th, and then the 27th. It's opening in a lot of places.
Well, thank you for coming and talking about it. It's it was such a wonderful film to experience, and I just love the way that it is its own specific story in a specific time period, but resonates so deeply on so many larger issues about the environment, issues about our relationships with people of color, and I just thought it was a really beautiful project, and I congratulate you. I'm excited for your opening. Are you excited?
I'm excited, yeah, anxious and excited.
And it was such a beautiful and transformational experience for us, actually going out there and making that. And so we hope we're happy to hear that it resonated that way for you, and I hope it does for other people as well.
All right, thanks a lot.
It's been a pleasure talking. Bye-bye.